You know that moment when you're in the middle of something important, maybe a meeting or a first date or trying to sleep, and your body just decides to betray you. That sudden, involuntary hic that makes you sound like a broken toy. Yeah, we need to talk about that. Because here on Briefly Science, we're about to dive into one of the weirdest glitches in your biological software. Hiccups. They're annoying, they're embarrassing, and they might just be a 375-million-year-old message from when your ancestors lived in the water and breathed through gills. Wait, what? Let's zoom out for a second. Your body is basically a house built on top of an older house, built on top of an even older house. Evolution doesn't start from scratch. It renovates, and sometimes it leaves behind some seriously weird plumbing. Think about it like this. Imagine you bought a Victorian mansion that's been remodeled 17 times. The kitchen's from 2020, but the wiring's from 1950, the foundation's from 1880, and somewhere in the basement there's still a coal chute that nobody knows what to do with. That coal chute? That's your hiccup reflex. So what exactly happens when you hiccup? Let's zoom into your chest for a moment. Below your lungs sits this dome-shaped muscle called the diaphragm. It's basically responsible for pulling air into your lungs when you breathe. Normally, it's smooth, rhythmic, like a gentle drum keeping time with your life. But sometimes, for reasons we'll get into, your diaphragm decides to throw a tantrum. It contracts suddenly, violently, sucking air into your lungs. At the exact same moment, a trapdoor at the back of your throat called the glottis snaps shut. Air slams into that closed door, and hic. That's the sound of air crashing into your vocal cords. The whole thing takes about 35 milliseconds, faster than you can blink. But here's where it gets interesting. This weird little reflex, this glitch, seems to serve absolutely no purpose in modern humans. None. It doesn't help you breathe better. It doesn't protect you from anything. If anything, it's just annoying. So why do we still have it? Let's rewind. Way back. About 375 million years ago, your ancestors looked nothing like you. They were fish. And these fish were facing a problem. They wanted to come onto land, but they still needed to breathe underwater. So they evolved a pretty clever solution. They had both gills and primitive lungs. Fast forward a few million years, and these fish evolved into amphibians. Think tadpoles. Little creatures that spend part of their life in water and part on land. And here's the thing. When a tadpole breathes water through its gills, it faces a unique challenge. It needs to pump water into its mouth and throat, push it across the gills to extract oxygen, but it absolutely cannot let that water get into its newly evolved lungs. That would be bad. So what does the tadpole do? It closes its glottis, that trapdoor in the throat, takes a sharp breath, and pumps water through its gills. Sound familiar? Yeah. It's basically a hiccup. The exact same muscle contractions, the exact same neural patterns, the exact same glottis closure. Scientists studying this noticed something wild. The brain stem signals that control gill breathing in tadpoles are almost identical to the signals that cause hiccups in mammals. Same origin in the brainstem, same muscle contractions, same everything. It's like finding the same piece of ancient code running in both Windows 95 and your iPhone. And here's the kicker. Tadpole gill breathing and human hiccups both respond the same way to carbon dioxide. Expose a tadpole to higher CO2 levels and its gill breathing slows down. Do the same to a human with hiccups and the hiccups stop. That's why breathing into a paper bag sometimes works. You're essentially using a 375-million-year-old off switch. But wait, if hiccups serve no purpose, Why did evolution keep them around? Good question. There are a few theories. One idea is that hiccups might help babies. All mammals nurse when they're young, and babies, human babies especially, tend to swallow a lot of air while drinking milk. Too much air in the stomach is uncomfortable, so maybe hiccups evolved as a kind of burp reflex. The theory goes that the sharp contraction of the diaphragm, combined with the closure of the glottis, creates just enough pressure to force trapped air out of the stomach. Some studies suggest babies can drink 20 to 30% more milk after burping. Not bad for an evolutionary hack. There's another fascinating angle. Human fetuses start hiccuping in the womb as early as 10 weeks, and they do it a lot, up to 2.5% of their day. That's way more than adults. Some researchers think fetal hiccups might help the developing brain map out the body's internal organs, teaching it where everything is and how it all connects. Kind of like debugging your neural software before you're even born. But here's the honest truth. We don't really know for sure why we hiccup. The leading theory is still that hiccups are vestigial, a leftover. Evolutionary baggage that we're stuck with because evolution doesn't optimize, it just good enough. Now, for most of us, hiccups are a minor annoyance. They last a few minutes, maybe an hour if you're unlucky, and then they vanish. But not for everyone. Meet Charles Osborne. On June 13, 1922, this Iowa farmer was weighing a 350-pound hog for slaughter when he fell. He felt nothing at the time, no pain, no injury, but when he stood up, he started hiccuping, and he didn't stop. Not for a day, not for a week, not for 68 years. 68 years. At his peak, Osborne was hiccuping 40 times per minute. That's 2,400 times per hour. Roughly 24,000 times per day. Over his lifetime, doctors estimate he hiccuped around 430 million times. 430 million. Let that sink in for a second. He became something of a celebrity. He appeared on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. He was featured in Ripley's Believe It or Not. He received thousands of letters from people claiming they had the cure. Someone once fired both barrels of a shotgun behind him to try to scare the hiccups away. It didn't work. It just scared him. Doctors eventually figured out what happened. When Osborne fell, he ruptured a tiny blood vessel in his brainstem, about the size of a pin. That tiny injury damaged the part of his brain that inhibits the hiccup reflex. Basically, his brain lost the ability to turn off the hiccup signal. The switch was stuck in the on position. And here's the strangest part. In February 1990, after 68 years, his hiccups just stopped. No explanation, no warning, they just ended. A year later, Charles Osborne passed away, finally free from the glitch that had defined most of his life. So what's actually happening in your brain when you hiccup? Let's zoom into the neural wiring for a moment. Your hiccup reflex is controlled by something called a reflex arc. It's basically a loop. Sensory input comes in, a signal travels to your brain. Your brain sends a command back out, and your body responds. There are three parts to this loop. First, the afferent limb, the input. This includes nerves like the phrenic nerve, which runs from your neck all the way down to your diaphragm, and the vagus nerve, which wanders through your chest and abdomen. When something irritates these nerves, maybe you ate too fast, maybe you drank something fizzy, maybe you just laughed too hard, they send a signal up to your brain. Second, the central processing unit. This is located in your brainstem, buried deep in the medulla oblongata. It's the same area that controls your breathing, your heartbeat, all those automatic functions you don't think about. When the irritation signal arrives, this ancient part of your brain decides, yep, time to hiccup. Third, the efferent limb, the output. The brain sends a command back down the phrenic nerve to your diaphragm, telling it to contract. At the same time, it signals the recurrent laryngeal nerve to snap your glottis shut. And boom, hic. The whole system is shockingly primitive. It doesn't involve your conscious brain at all. You can't decide to hiccup, and you can't decide to stop. It's hardwired, ancient, a reflex that's older than language, older than walking upright, older than mammals themselves. But here's where it gets kind of absurd. The phrenic nerve, the one that controls your diaphragm, takes this ridiculously long, winding path through your body. In fish, the equivalent nerve was short and direct because the gills were right next to the brain. But in mammals, the diaphragm is way down in your abdomen. So the nerve has to loop all the way down from your neck, around your heart, and then back to the diaphragm. It's like routing a cable from New York to Los Angeles by way of Alaska. Inefficient? Sure. But evolution works with what it's got. And that long meandering nerve is constantly getting irritated. Eat too much? Irritated? Drink too fast? Irritated? Get excited, stressed, or laugh too hard? Irritated. Your body is basically running on 375 million-year-old code that nobody bothered to update. So, can we fix the glitch? Can we get rid of hiccups? Well, sort of. Most hiccup remedies work by doing one of two things. Either they overstimulate the vagus nerve to interrupt the reflex, or they increase carbon dioxide in your blood to calm down your diaphragm. Holding your breath? That raises CO2 levels. Breathing into a paper bag? Same deal. Drinking water upside down, gargling ice water, eating a spoonful of sugar, these all work by overstimulating the nerves and kind of resetting the loop. It's like turning your body off and back on again. There's even a device called the Hiccup, basically a special straw that requires intense suction to drink through. The effort distracts your nerves and breaks the hiccup cycle. It works for about 90% of people, which is honestly impressive for something so simple. But here's the thing. None of these cures work for everyone, and none of them work every time. Because hiccups are a reflex. They're not logical, they're not predictable, they're just there. A reminder that you're running on ancient hardware that still thinks you might need to breathe through gills someday. And honestly, that's kind of beautiful in a weird way. Your body is a living museum. Every time you hiccup, you're experiencing a reflex that's been passed down through hundreds of millions of years of evolution. From fish to amphibians to mammals to you. A tiny echo of the time when your ancestors were learning to leave the water and breathe the air for the first time. So the next time you hiccup, maybe don't think of it as a glitch. Think of it as a message. A little postcard from deep time, reminding you that you're connected to an unbroken chain of life, stretching back to the ancient oceans. You're a walking, talking, hiccuping miracle of evolutionary engineering. Sure, it's annoying, but it's also a reminder that we're all just renovated fish, trying our best with the bodies we inherited. If you enjoyed this journey through evolutionary weirdness, hit that subscribe button for Briefly Science and let us know in the comments, what's the longest you've ever had the hiccups? And what cure worked for you? We'd love to hear your stories. Until next time, keep breathing. And if your body decides to throw a 375 million-year-old tantrum, well, at least now you know why.